How far would you go if your sick sister needed a kidney transplant? You're watching Recap Kid. The movie begins with a radio broadcast telling the tale of a man named Ryu who had given up his dreams of attending an art school to get a job to support his sick sister who needed a kidney transplant. Ryu is a deaf and mute man who finds himself sitting in a hospital facing a doctor who is informing him about his blood group and how he is not a correct match for his sister and thus ineligible to donate his kidney to her. The doctor suggests keeping her on dialysis till a matching kidney donor is arranged. Despite his disability, he still manages to make out most of what's being said to him. He seems to be quite frustrated at the thought of being helpless and of no use to his sick sister, taking his anger out by practicing baseball. Later that night in a public toilet, he is surprised to discover stickers on the wall advertising human organs for sale. It's then revealed that as a factory worker, Ryu would be involved in labor-intensive tasks for several hours a day, slaving his life away to please his strict boss but making barely enough money to support himself and his sister. He lived in an apartment with his dear sister, oblivious to the noise that his upstairs neighbors would regularly make during their intimate activities. As much as he cared about his sister's well-being, he would oftentimes be completely unaware of her screaming out in agony due to her illness. In the next scene, we are introduced to Cha Young-mi, a brooding girl with short hair, lying in bed alongside Ryu, her boyfriend of several years. Communicating in sign language, she tells him a bizarre story about a two-headed man from Australia who suffered from such intense headaches that he had to blast off one of his heads. As the story goes on, Ryu's misfortune seems to be only getting worse as he is suddenly laid off from his job at the factory. However, he receives 10 million won in employment benefits from his company and plans to use this money to arrange a kidney for his sister. Using the phone number he saw on the sticker earlier in the bathroom, he comes into contact with the mysterious organ trafficking organization. He is taken to a desolate construction site to meet an old woman who negotiates a deal with him, saying that she'll arrange a kidney for his sister in exchange for 10 million won and one of Ryu's own kidneys. After much pondering, Ryu agrees and even helps out the woman as an act of kindness when he assists her as she gives herself a drug shot. Sometime later, Ryu wakes up in a daze, lying completely naked out in the open on the rooftop. The woman and her team are nowhere to be seen, and the freshly stitched up wound on his flank is a telltale sign that his precious kidney, as well as his hard-earned 10 million won, has been stolen from him in the blink of an eye. Desperate and helpless, poor Ryu runs out on the street to seek help, but no one bats an eye toward a young naked man flailing his arms around by the roadside. The scene cuts to the hospital some days later, where Ryu finds himself facing the same doctor once again, who is ecstatic to inform Ryu that a matching kidney donor has been arranged and his sister should be admitted for surgery within 10 days. The doctor inquires about the 10 million won, asking Ryu to keep it ready for the surgery. Ryu doesn't reveal his prior series of unfortunate events to him, instead faking a smile and leaving. Back at Young-mi's house, she is baffled at Ryu's revelations and thrashes him around the room out of concern for his sister. In order to arrange money for the sister's surgery, Young-mi comes up with quite a dangerous plan, which involves kidnapping the daughter of Ryu's boss and holding her for ransom. The couple spy on Ryu's boss and his friend Dong-jin as they reach their house in a car, accompanied by their daughters. A desperate man jumps in front of the car out of nowhere, begging Dong-jin to give him back his job, even putting deep cuts on his abdomen using a welder, as a show of his loyalty to his company. As chaos ensues on the street with all the men fighting, Ryu becomes increasingly wary of the kidnapping, telling Young-mi that he would be the first person the police would suspect, since he was the most recently fired employee. They make minor changes to their plan, deciding to kidnap Dong-jin's daughter Yoo-sun instead. They lure the young girl in by playing with her at a playground, then take her back to Ryu's home. Yoo-sun has a rather great time at Ryu's place, playing with her doll and talking with Ryu's sister, who is under the assumption that Ryu is babysitting Yoo-sun. Ryu scares her around the house to make her cry, immediately taking photos of her face, which he later sends to Yoo-sun's father asking for 26 million won in exchange for his daughter. Ryu's sick sister finds herself bored at home all alone so often that the little girl's company greatly uplifts her spirits, and she gives the girl her contact on a piece of paper. Dong-jin sets off with the money in a briefcase, anxious about what's waiting for him next. He He is oblivious to the fact that Youngmi is following him just a few steps behind. He reaches a deserted road where Ryu ambushes him, tying him to a pole with a plastic bag over his head. Ryu grabs the briefcase, excited about the money and finally curing her sister of her torment. When he reaches back home, he sees Yusun watching television, who passes him a piece of paper. To Ryu's utmost horror, it is a note from his sister, who has finally discovered Ryu's unemployment, as well as his elaborate kidnapping plan. His sister instructs Ryu to let Yusun go as soon as possible, calling it her death wish. Concerned, Ryu runs to the bathroom, where he is shocked to discover his sister's lifeless body floating in a bathtub, finally putting an end to her agonizing life. Carrying his sister's dead body in a car accompanied by Yusun, Ryu sets off to a nearby river which he had frequently visited as a kid. There, he buries her under a mound of rocks, still reeling in shock at the sight of her lifeless eyes and her sickly blue lips. He is distracted by a strange homeless man and shuns him away, who later runs off to discover Yusun peacefully sleeping in the car. As he tries to steal Yusun's necklace, he wakes her up, scaring her off. The poor girl calls out to Ryu for help, knowing nothing about his deafness. In a desperate attempt to reach Ryu, she jumps into the river, trying to swim her way across, but tragically drowns in it instead. Meanwhile, Ryu is busy giving his dead sister a burial, unaware of Yusun's final shrieks for help. When he finally discovers the young girl's dead body floating in the river, he gets overwhelmed by his awful misfortune once again, choosing to run away instead. When Dongjin is finally freed, he immediately contacts the police, who soon discovers his daughter's body in the river. Following a thorough interrogation, he is led to a hospital where he is made to witness his own daughter's autopsy in disturbing detail. They discover the note that Ryu's sister had given to Yusun, but no one is able to recognize the handwriting. Later, at Yusun's cremation, her mother pays her a visit with a heart full of guilt for abandoning her young child. Back at his home, still grieving his only child's death, Dongjin starts getting hallucinations of his daughter standing in the room. The next morning, the detective asks Dongjin if he has any suspects in mind, and he immediately thinks of the employee whom he had fired, the one who had put up a bloody spectacle in front of his house. The duo arrives at the employee's house only to discover the entire family sprawled across a small room, dead after eating a poisoned pizza. After checking for their pulse, they discover that a young boy is still alive. Feeling responsible for the family's demise, Dongjin urgently carries the employee's son to a hospital where the doctors begin their efforts to save him. Dongjin searches around Ryu's house, which has been abandoned by him, as he is hiding at Youngmi's place. He compares the photos he had received of his kidnapped daughter to the landmarks in the house and soon discovers a matching wallpaper, becoming certain of Ryu's involvement in his daughter's untimely death. He overhears a radio broadcast, playing a song that has been requested by none other than Ryu himself, which he had dedicated to his dead sister. Dongjin soon reaches out to the radio station at once and inquires about Ryu. The woman at the station shows him some paintings that were sent in by Ryu, showing a scenic view of the lake where the tragedy had taken place. Dongjin's heart is lusting for revenge when he arrives at the lake to uncover Ryu's sister buried under the mound of rocks. He even comes across the homeless man who has his daughter's necklace around his neck, further confirming his suspicions about Ryu's involvement. After taking the corpse to an autopsy lab, Dongjin is asked about his plans regarding Ryu once he has been caught, and he flat out admits to wanting him dead for his crimes. Meanwhile, at Youngmi's house, Ryu is pondering over his next move. He arrives to the conclusion that his misfortunes began when he was cheated out of his money by the organ traffickers, and that nobody would have died if he had only been successful in acquiring a kidney for his sister. Along with his girlfriend's help, he plans to kill the family running the organ trafficking scam. Using the same sticker as before, Youngmi contacts them under the guise of buying a kidney. She is taken to an apartment where she comes across the same old woman who had previously scammed Ryu. With their new location now exposed, Ryu sets off on his mission of vengeance. He invades the apartment building and quietly follows a man who is one of the organ traffickers. As soon as he unlocks the door, he is ambushed by Ryu, who strikes him with a fatal blow to his head using a baseball bat. Inside, he discovers the old woman and her son operating on another poor victim of their scams. As Ryu is attacked by the son, he calmly pulls out a screwdriver with a devilish smile on his face and stabs him in the neck. He successfully kills off the entire family and barbarically feasts on their kidneys as his final act of vengeance. Meanwhile, at Youngmi's house, she is paid an unfortunate visit by Dongjin, who ties her up to a chair and threatens to electrocute her if she doesn't reveal Ryu's whereabouts. Youngmi tells Dongjin about how she is a part of this secret terrorist organization and warns him against harming her, telling him that her fellow members will make sure to hunt him down and kill him. Disappointed by her response, Dongjin starts electrocuting her, hoping she'll finally give in. However, the woman displays remarkable courage and loyalty and only tells him that his daughter's death was an accident. She is still forced to bear Dongjin's torture, which inevitably ends up killing her. When Ryu returns to his girlfriend's apartment, he is surprised to see the police there investigating a crime scene. In an elevator with the detectives, he finally gets a closer look at the victim's body, who, much to his surprise, turns out to be Youngmi herself. Overtaken by grief, he realizes his misfortune is still after him, as both his sister and his girlfriend have died in the span of a few days. During the next few hours, both Ryu and Dongjin have been driven mad by their thirst for revenge as they patiently wait at each other's houses for the other to come back home. They spend a full day waiting, after which Ryu decides to return, only to find Dongjin sprawled across his bed in a deep sleep. He prepares to confront him, but as soon as he touches the door handle, he gets electrocuted and falls, which wakes Dongjin up, who later carries Ryu inside and starts beating him. The next morning, Dongjin takes Ryu to the lake in which his daughter had drowned and asks him if he realizes why he needs to die. He then goes underwater and cuts open Ryu's heels, which causes him to lose balance and bleed out in the river, his misfortune finally coming to an end with his own demise. Dongjin chops up his body into several pieces using a saw and takes them to a deserted place to bury. As he is digging the ground, he is interrupted by a group of men arriving in a jeep. They identify him using a photo and proceed to stab him multiple times in his body, delivering the final blow that pins a note in his chest, surprisingly written by Youngmi. Dongjin finally realizes that these men are the members of the secret organization that Youngmi was talking about, and they have come to take revenge on her behalf. The movie ends as Dongjin breathes his final breath, facing the chopped up pieces of his victim Ryu, with the brutal cycle of vengeance finally coming to an end. That was it for the recap, guys. Let us know in the comments if you like it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video.